Woot
Mic
woot.
Microphones are on and they actually work this time. Hooray.
Hey, good news. Good news.
Hey, 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 what's up, YouTube? Sorry you couldn't hear our last 3 episodes. That was a technical
Yeah.
glitch that has since been resolved, hopefully.
Yes.
Should be fixed from now on. Oh, they can't see our faces. They can just see the splash screen. Now
Oh,
they can see our faces.
now they
Okay,
can see our faces. Hi,
perfect.
this is our faces.
Yep, you know them, you hate them, and yet we still have them. So crazy how that works. So, welcome to Fireside Breakdowns. I'm John,
And I'm Robin.
and on this show, we break down some of the most controversial, complex, and even polarizing topics facing our society. We use honest, good faith analysis, backed by research, to form our conclusions. We promise to skew our bias toward what can be factually supported and to make it clear when we're giving you our opinion versus speaking about actual research.
We're human. We have blind spots and personal biases, and they will show up sometimes. But the goal of this show isn't to convince you to see things our way. We want to give everyone a foundational understanding of these complicated topics and present the most truthful information available so that we can discuss and address these issues in a thoughtful and beneficial way.
We talk about some pretty heavy stuff on the show, and we tackle topics that might feel polarizing. But we do that because we have an important goal in mind. We want to change the way people have hard conversations. And we think we can do that using research and discussion to create common understanding. And since you're here, we hope you want the same thing.
So, we suggest getting comfortable and maybe having a good drink on hand as we work through this stuff. And today, as we celebrate episode 100, welcome to our
100.
fireside.
Dance,
100
dance,
times.
dance. Yes, that's our 100th welcome
Yeah.
into our. I mean, technically, this is our 101st episode. We went back and forth on which one we were going to
Well,
celebrate, but the earliest one, you can split this two ways. We
yeah.
have one episode that I think we just missed, and we were just like, "Hey, sorry, we're missing this one." And we have one episode at the very beginning that's an intro. So take one of those out. We're at episode 100.
Right, right.
So
Yeah. 100 episodes of actual content.
yeah. So
So,
which is
that's good.
crazy to me. This is we because it's our episode 100. We're gonna do what we want on this one, and we're
Yeah.
not researching jack all. This isn't
No.
from the headlines. It's not a one of our lesser researched ones. This
Mm-mm.
is a behind the scenes, if you will, a retrospective maybe, but not like the
Yeah.
last one we did. I don't know. It's just we're just hanging out, guys. We're just
We're
hanging
just
out.
hanging
We're
out.
gonna ask each other some questions about the podcast, and if you like it, then great. And if you don't like it, we'll see you in a week. So that's how
Yeah.
that works. So
Yeah. That's what we got today.
that's it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which is something that everybody might notice, anybody who watches the YouTube stuff would notice this, is that we have usually a reference to dancing or something at the top of every episode. We've mentioned it in a couple podcasts so far.
Oh, yeah.
We are always humming something about dancing or something. I edited it out of the actual like published podcast. We choose a song every week that has something to do with dancing as an interlude just for the two of us between the introduction and the actual like meat of the episode.
Yeah.
Robin, how the hell did that start? Because I don't remember.
So I think it started like in it was within the first 5 episodes probably. Um and we the way that the structure of the podcast worked is we would have the intro, we'd have a little bit of music, we'd have the intro, and then we'd have a bigger music break, and we would always just like bop around where that music break should be. And then I started writing in like groovy dance jam because that's what our initial uh, podcast music sounded like. And then I started putting in a real actual groovy dance jam, and then from then on it's just become like a thing.
Yep.
And I didn't know there were so many songs about dancing or that mention, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
about dancing, but as long as it mentions dancing.
Right.
um
Just
yeah.
references it. And yeah, like it's actually um we have an entire, well, we have 100 episodes now, so we've got 90 some odd songs that
Yeah.
reference dancing in some way. I think maybe slightly less than that. We have the whole Fireside
Yeah.
playlist, which has all of those songs in it, but also has some bonus songs that we just like. We should probably go
Yeah.
through and edit that one, edit the
Yeah,
playlist down
edit
a
it
little
down
bit.
a little bit,
Yeah, it's a
change it
little
up a little bit.
unwieldy at the moment. We'll curate it. Curate it.
Yeah. But we do
Um,
have a Groovy Dance Jams playlist that we try to keep updated, that is available to our patrons for sure, to listen to if they would like to hear all of our Groovy Dance Jams and know what we're bopping to
yeah.
every week.
What we decided the dance jam of the week was. It's usually a Robin decision.
Yeah.
She's got one. Oh, I'm playing this one accidentally on the YouTube recording, so I better stop that.
Oh, copyright.
Yep, it's a human right by the strike. So those of you watching YouTube definitely got a few bars of the intro on that. We're talking
It's
about
a
the song, so
jam.
it's fair use.
It is an absolute bop. I just discovered that band this week, and they're pretty damn enjoyable.
Yeah, got that heavy bass. So yeah, that's just something silly. I don't know.
Yeah, fun little
Robin,
quirk.
yeah. What was something you wanted to talk about for our 100th episode?
Oh gosh, man, I don't know. It's just crazy to me that we've literally sat down to do this 100 asterisk times. Like, this isn't something that I ever thought I would do. And then once we started doing it, I never thought it would be on video or on YouTube or anything like that. So it's just crazy to me that even after 100 times, it's still, I
Smacking
don't know,
the
it still feels
microphone.
new. It still feels, I'm a microphone puncher. I talk with my hands. But I'm supposed to have the microphone close to my face. So it's a problem.
You are. You are.
It's a problem. It just still feels new and weird and awkward every single time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't think that it would after 100 times, but it does.
Yeah. I remember back when we were talking about like getting to episode 10. We were like, man, if we make it to episode 10 and we can still do this, like that's how you, like, most podcasts don't make it past episode 7. So episode 10 was like the goal. And that was back in the day. Like, our original episodes were long. You can go back and listen to those. They were like
crazy.
2.5, 3 hours long each. But they were every other week. So yeah, that's why I think we recommend people start in season 2.
Right. Well, I think we switched to shorter episodes every week, probably, gosh, about halfway through season 1.
Yeah. I mean, it's just there's just a handful of episodes, maybe 10 somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That are like long. I don't even know if it's that many.
We do get much better at this in season 2. If you wanted to start there, we should probably go back and record remastered versions of the first several.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the first thing, so, we had Apple Pie in the Sky, high hopes
we did
for this podcast when we first started it. And we came out of the gate stupid, talking about systemic racism, and not just like in an hour chunk, but like I think we have like almost 10 hours that's just talking about systemic racism, and in 3 episodes. I mean, it's a lot. It's like an overwhelming amount. And that was back also, we everybody who listens knows that we pseudo script all of the episodes now, because otherwise we'll make a 3-hour episode, for one. And 2, it keeps us restricted to like making the point and moving on. But we were talking fast for 3 hours about a ton of sources and
just statistics topics all over the place.
Yeah, it definitely. Well, it's 10 hours. We could do 10 episodes easily out of just those first 3 episodes now if we remix them. Good information.
Oh, great information, but a lot. A lot.
Yeah.
In our defense, we it was summer of 2020. We didn't really have a whole lot else to do.
That's true. Yeah.
We had time. We had plenty of
We did have
time.
time. Yeah, it was summer of 2020. It was like George Floyd was big in the news, which is why I think we started with systemic racism.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was we were heated, we were hot, we're still heated, but we're a little
Yeah,
more
we're still
under
heated.
control
We're just
now.
heated in 45 minutes now.
45 minutes. I think since we've started, trying to maintain the 45-minute schedule, we've only managed maybe 30% of the episodes actually come in around 45 minutes, and the rest are like
Right.
50 to 55 to an hour.
But
Still
that's
better than an hour 15, hour
okay.
20.
Right. Because we were trying for an hour before and we were ending up at an hour and 15. So
This
maybe
is
in season 4 we'll make it to 45 minutes. I don't
yeah,
know.
we'll aim for 30-minute episodes, and we'll actually consistently hit 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, that'll be the day.
Yeah.
As somebody who edits all of these podcasts, first of all, need to mention tried a new editing program a couple weeks back for the espionage one,
Oh, yeah.
Descript. Yeah, that's why that one's so funky to listen to. It
Oh,
did not work. I mean,
yeah. I
it
don't know that
works,
it
but
works well for audio edit.
yeah, it's not what we need for a podcast. So that's why that one's the little choppy and jumpy.
Mm.
It's
It's
all
great for
still
cutting out reels, but
yeah. Yeah. They say you can use it for podcasting. I would need to see some more final product to see how it turns out. But yeah, I'll have
yeah.
to re-edit that episode and upload it at some point. I just legitimately have not had time in the past couple of weeks. But the content's still good and it's still listenable. It's just a little
Different.
more jarring to listen to. Not my best work. But
Yeah.
yeah, those initial episodes, they were 3 hours. Like I said, I think the first episode, it took me almost 7 hours to edit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a long day. I remember finishing it and being like, I cannot do this again.
Yep. Yeah. When we're down to, I mean, edit time now, it doesn't take you more than what, 2, 3 hours
Uh,
now?
if on the outside, it's 3 hours. If it's a really um, rough one, if we had a lot of restarts or something, um, usually I can, if I'm like, if I'm on my meds and I'm really like focused in on it, I can get one knocked out in about an hour and a half now.
That's good.
Um,
That's good.
but I've also started editing at 1.9 speed, so I listen to it at
Yeah.
double speed, which is good and bad. I sometimes, like, if there's a long gap, it doesn't come through to my ear as much. So there's a little give and take, but I'm not as worried about like making it sound like the perfect audio production, uh, like play that I was
Yeah.
in initially. Definitely learned a
If
lot
we're
though.
forever an NPR podcast, then we can definitely worry about that. But
Well,
until then,
at that point,
until
hopefully
then,
we'll have hired an editor,
yeah.
um, for making money. So that's something that I am looking at here now that we're in season 3 of this is this is our 100th episode and we're averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of, hold on, I can look this up. What's our most listened to episode? Do you remember off the top of your head?
It is still Systemic Racism Part 1, 99 downloads. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it is a huge deal to us. 99
Really?
people have listened to us talk about systemic racism for
For
two and a
three
half hours.
hours. Yeah. That I wonder if that's just because of the because it's been out the longest.
Yeah,
Um,
that's generally how it works. And if people find a new podcast, they'll listen to whatever episode caught their attention. And then a lot of times they'll just go back to the beginning. So,
and then they'll be
but
like, "Oh,
systemic
fast forward."
racism 1 and 2, and the introduction, and then bad apples and other arguments against systemic racism, and then systemic racism part 3. So those 4.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're at, gosh, 3.4 roughly thousand downloads all time. So over the course of 3 years. In 2022, we've had 1,142 downloads. compared to 2021's 1,672 downloads. So, gosh, I remember our goal for last year was to get to 5,000 downloads overall. So that's something that's been very frustrating for us to
Yeah.
deal with is getting traction for this. You know, for 100
Yeah.
episodes, trying to get people to tune in, which is why we rely on reviews, listener reviews, and why we ask you every week to leave a review, because we love doing this. Obviously, I think it should be apparent when we get roughly 30 to 40 listens per episode, for each new episode in a week. We're not doing this for the fame and glory, um, but uh, it would be nice. It would be
Yeah.
nice if we could start hitting that sort of growth curve. But we understand it's a not an easy listen. On top of that, we talk about hard stuff, so
Yeah.
we are grateful
And
for every single
and
listen we do get.
we kind of are in a catch-22 a little bit because a lot of what we talk about falls into the category of social issues and politics and these sensitive topics. And the social media platforms right now are really scaling back on that content. They're really trying to avoid being a part of that polarizing political climate. And unfortunately, they don't listen to every episode of our podcast and understand that this isn't polarizing content. They pull out keywords and in the text and how we choose to promote it. I think for for the Espionage Act episode, I think I actually used Pig Latin in the caption of the Instagram post to avoid saying the word president so as not to trigger the algorithm and not get that keyword picked up. So
Interesting.
it's we either have to run ads all the time or try to figure out how to make it go and promote otherwise.
Yeah, and we like I don't want to be one of those like advertisers where we're sort of like using numbers and leet speak and stuff to, you know, hide what we're talking about from the algorithm so it doesn't.
Right.
Which means that we have to find other ways to get creative, and it's just hard. We're fighting we need the algorithm to be on our side, and at the same time we're fighting against the algorithm.
Yeah.
And if you listen to our episode on the algorithm, you'd know that we both hate the concept of one algorithm, but it's
Yeah.
short.
We are fighting all of the changes that Instagram is making. We're fighting all of the battles that Facebook's trying to win because of their complicity in a lot of the problems that happened between 2016 and 2020.
Yeah.
And it really puts us in an awkward spot to try and help solve the problem when the tools that we all rely on to get our information are essentially just trying to ignore the problem right now, trying to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah. They don't want to. They don't want to end up in a lawsuit, and so they just don't do anything.
Yeah, and if you think about the hateful content, the hateful engagement that happens on political posts and political conversations, it gets really, really nasty in the comments, and that's not healthy. That's not healthy for people to engage with. That's not healthy for people to see. The demographics of social media are getting younger and younger, and I fully support their effort to keep that kind of toxicity out, but it makes it hard to build a community where you're trying to combat that.
Yeah, where you're just trying, where you're legitimately trying to have an informed conversation about it, and that's something that we realized really early on. It's something that we probably should have realized earlier is like even trying to promote the podcast in and of itself is divisive. Like as hard as we try not to be, like obviously we come down on one side of an issue personally, and oftentimes the data that we find is stronger towards one side, and that's kind of the problem, is there's a massive, disinformation or spin campaign that we're trying to cut through so people can make real decisions and have real conversations. But as soon as you take any side on it, or not even take a side, as soon as you present information
Yeah.
about it, it does not matter what you are presenting. Literally doesn't matter. Somebody comes out and starts attacking it. It's the craziest thing. We can put the most benign thing on our social media, and somebody is going to come and call us something horrible or say that we're idiots or something like that.
Yeah.
And we I remember we put up an infographic that said that white people would no longer have the majority of the population,
Mm-hmm.
like would no longer make up the majority of the population in the United States by like 2030 or 2035, something like that, or maybe it's
Yeah.
2050, near enough that most people seeing it on social media will be alive for that time.
Right.
And what it showed is that like the percentage of the population that would be white would be like 49 or 48% at that point. It's basically the crossover point. And my God, people, the number of comments we got of people coming out
Yeah.
of the woodwork to be like, it's still the largest proportion of the population. I don't know what this majority thing you're talking about is, but it looks like the majority to me. And like trying to school us on what it meant for the population to be plurality white and not
Right.
when they thought it was the same as majority. It was headache inducing. I was so close, and we can't behave like this, but I almost started posting the definition of majority on all of those comments so
Yeah.
people would understand that just because you are the largest proportion of something does not make you the majority of something, because the majority
Mm-hmm.
is 50.1%, if we want to put a number on it. Over 50% of the population. So
Yeah.
we will be in the near future majority minority, which is an interesting
Yes.
phrase to say. And honestly,
It is.
frankly, can't get there soon enough
I mean,
for a lot of reasons.
the fewer people get sunburned, the better, right?
Yes, cancer on the decline. I'm ready
Yes.
for a
At least
healthier,
the skin kind.
less melanoma prone population in America.
Yeah.
That's absurd. So yeah, that's something that I've noticed, is like the struggle with even doing what we're doing at all. It like a lot of people don't want to find common ground. They'll say it, but when it comes down to it, they just
Mm-hmm.
don't want to.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the systems that we rely on don't support finding common ground. Facebook or social media in general thrives off of engagement, and people are most likely to engage, we found, with
Mm-hmm.
stuff they disagree with. So negative
Yes.
engagement drives the algorithm. So that ad with the statistic I set for engagement, which meant,
Yeah.
because you can fine tune how an ad is shown, like the audience it's likely to see, and
Mm-hmm.
if you can set it for an audience that is most likely to click on it or to comment on it or to engage with it, or it's most like other content that they consume, stuff like that. So we as a podcast need engagement in order to drive the growth. So I foolishly set it for engagement, which meant that Facebook showed it to a bunch of people that would absolutely hate the content, so that they would comment on it and they would rage click.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to promote this podcast has been one of the most challenging marketing projects I've ever taken on. And I've been doing this job for, almost 15 years now. So it's really interesting. It's been a great challenge. It's pushed me in a lot of ways, but also frustrated me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's been super fun. So we talked a little bit about frustration for a minute. What is your favorite part of doing this podcast?
Oh man, my favorite part of doing the podcast, I really do love the actual recording part of it, which is probably not the best answer, but I do because we do have a lot of fun recording these. I think it's very
Yeah.
enjoyable. We get to, you know, I like the research too because I'm a huge nerd. So it's nice to be
Yeah.
able to go in and like build this, like to dive into it and try to find, what's the most reliable information that I can find for this. And, if we find a source, oftentimes we'll go in and we'll like back check the source to make sure the source itself isn't biased. Or sometimes I'll intentionally use a source that I know is biased, like the Heritage Foundation, something like that,
Yeah.
to make a point that goes against their primary talking point, which is
Yes.
always fun when you use information from somebody who is against something to prove their point wrong, or at least to argue against their point. Um, so yeah, I love the research and recording. But that seems dumb because that seems like a bad answer to me because that's what we do. Like that's the podcast. You research and record it. So my favorite thing about the podcast is the podcast. No. Um,
I mean, it makes sense to me.
it feels like a cop out answer. That's why I'm like struggling with it. Like,
Well,
all right, what's your favorite part? What's your favorite part? Let me hear what your answer is going to be, and
I
then
have two favorite parts.
the research and
So,
recording. Right.
no, I mean, I do also love those, but
Right.
no, my first favorite part is all of the conversations that I've gotten to have with people that I never thought I would have conversations about this stuff with. Like, um, living in a very conservative space and having spent a majority of the last 25 years in a very conservative group of people, especially the last 20 years. There, on my Facebook feed and my social network, there are a lot of people who fall on the other side of the points that we make a lot in this podcast. And even though we try not to be biased, we see where the information ends up. And a lot of times the research and the information ends up on the opposite perspective of a lot of the people that I interact with every day. And so when I get to have a conversation that is valuable or meaningful with someone who I know fundamentally at their core disagrees with me, but we can still talk about the research, we can still talk about why we ended up that way. We can still talk about, more than anything, I like to talk about what matters to them. Like why does this issue matter to you and why are you so strong in this belief? And I've had the opportunity to, I think, help people expand their perspective. I'm, like we say in the intro, we're not trying to get you to see things our way, but we're trying to get people to see things in a different way than they have before, whether or not they choose to change their beliefs or their behaviors. And so I've gotten to have some really, really amazing conversations with people about that. And then my second favorite part is actually the recording, which is for a different reason. I was the shy kid. I'm super introverted. This is probably one of the most uncomfortable things that I ever do in my entire life. And the fact that I still keep coming back and continue to do it, it's made me a braver person. It's made me a stronger person. Um, for the last like 7 years now, I've had a life motto of be brave. So if something scares me, but it's not going to hurt me, then I really try to challenge myself to be brave enough to do it. And this was one of those things. And so sitting down in front of a camera every single week and having my voice on audio and cutting out clips and all of that stuff is very, very uncomfortable. Probably always will be, but it's a chance for me to grow. And I really like that.
Yeah. And I think that gets to the core of what I actually do like about this myself is that it's hard to put yourself out there because people are going to dislike it. And I'm somebody, and this is something I'm increasingly realizing about myself, that I strongly value everybody liking me. As in, I will sacrifice things that do make me happy personally in order to appease or make somebody else happy. It's a problem, like legitimately a
Mm-hmm.
problem. I am in therapy
Yeah.
about. Um, so
Aren't we
if
all?
we're gonna put it out there, yeah, like to the point where it's gotten me into some pretty severe like situations where I have sort of lost myself because I was too busy trying to make sure that everybody liked me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and in doing this by its very nature, I can't do that. Like it is impossible to do this and ensure that everybody that listens to it is going to like me.
Yeah.
And you can, if you listen and you know that that's how my mentality is, if you listen to our earlier episodes and then our later, our more recent ones, you can hear at first where I'm very careful about
Mm-hmm.
couching things and how I word
Yeah.
something. And, you know, just because we said this doesn't mean this and that sort of thing. And like, and some of the feedback we got on our earlier episodes was was that it sounds like you're trying to coddle people too much,
Yeah.
um, which I understand. And a lot of that was driven by the fact that like even though I believed what I was saying, I didn't want to run the risk of alienating people.
Yeah.
And what I like about the podcast is that it's forcing me to put my personal stance and belief in things out there, even though again we do try to make it clear when something's a personal belief and something's based in research. Um, like it forces me to practice that sort of mindful. Not everybody has to like you. That's okay. Stand by your convictions. And that's been a great growth moment, series of year, 2 years for me.
Yeah. Two
Um,
years.
yeah, yeah, we're two and two plus now. It'll be three next summer. So yeah, Whew, whew.
Two and some change. It's crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. Is you know I've had engagements. I don't think I've actually ended up having as many conversations with people that I know as you have, even though I know several people that I know listen to this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Hello,
I
Erica.
think most of our
Oh,
audience is
hello.
people that you know.
Hello, yeah, hello, Ellis. Yes, um, but like a lot of them are in general agreement with what we're saying anyway, so it's not challenging if they listen to it.
Yeah.
There have been some at least one time listeners I know that don't agree with things that we talk about here. And that has been always like, oh, when they ask about it or when it comes up that I have a podcast and I know that
Yeah.
they're going to be a little like, I'm always like, yep, I have a podcast.
Yeah.
It's,
Yes.
it's, it's called Fireside Breakdowns and you should listen to it. I look
Mm-hmm.
forward to your thoughts. And then
Yeah.
most of the time, nothing happens. Like they just, they either don't listen to it or they're like, yeah, it was a great episode. And I'm like, oh, okay. That wasn't so
Yeah.
bad. So, yeah.
I do pucker. Like I get a little cringy every time someone brings up the fact that I have a podcast. Well, like when I got security breached at my work, we have a whole Slack channel that is devoted to what happens when people accidentally leave their computers unlocked.
Mm-mm-mm.
It's called security breach, and it has only ever happened to me twice. Both were within the last 6 months when we moved my desk to a new location. And this last time, somebody put in, I have the best podcast in the world. Everyone should listen to it. And I cringed really, really hard
Yeah.
in my heart, knowing that the entire company saw that. And even though I know that there are people at my work that listen to the podcast, I like it just made me really uncomfortable,
Yeah.
uncomfy.
Absolutely.
Um,
I'm a,
but it's good,
it is good.
uncomfy, I guess.
It is a good uncomfortable. It's growth uncomfortable instead of
Yes.
pain and death uncomfortable.
Yes.
um,
Sometimes it all feels like pain and death uncomfortable.
oh yeah, yeah. No, there's a
Um,
huge overlap
but
there. It's what's interesting is that the reason I love theater, and if you are new to the show, I do have a degree in theater. Um, the reason I love it is for the same reason you love the podcast. And that's because before I had a degree in theater, I was pretty shy. I definitely wasn't outgoing. I think I'm still introverted to a degree, although most people would probably laugh to hear that. Um, and it
They
forced
laugh at
me.
me too when I say it.
Yeah,
I just tell them I'm an introvert with coping skills.
exactly. I'm really good at faking it, guys, but you're
Yeah.
exhausting. Please leave me alone.
I
Um,
promise I will have a headache as soon as I get in the car after being at this social event.
yeah, I have done my one social event for this 2 week period. I will see you at the end of the month. Thank you. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, that's exactly why I love theater and I'm still passionate about it, is because it does force that growth. And this has been a natural extension of that for both of us in different ways. And that makes me very
Yeah.
happy. Hmm.
Hmm.
Do you have do you have a moment that didn't make the pod that is your favorite that we
Oh
can
God.
share with the world now?
There is one blooper cut that I think it's like 4 minutes long, and it's just an absolute train wreck. It is just completely derailed, and I think I spend half of it laughing. I may have almost fallen out of my chair at some point. The bloopers are my favorite, one of my favorite parts of this entire thing. And there are days when it's just a rough day, and I'll just go hop in the bloopers folder and pull something up because it makes me laugh. And laughing is the best way to pull me out of a funk. So I love all the bloopers. Um,
We have quite a
so many
few. I'm
bloopers.
looking I'm looking at the blooper reel. We've actually, what's weird is that, or yeah, what's weird is like we have far fewer bloopers now than we used to. Part of that's because we're more comfortable just leaving crap in that is
Yes.
silly.
Yes.
Um and part of that's also we actually like have gotten kind of good at doing this. I
We
dare
have.
say. Um we
Yeah, we've gotten a lot better. I
yeah,
think another reason we don't have as many bloopers lately is that a lot of times when we record, um, we're a little pressed for time. And a lot of our
yeah.
bloopers happened when it would be a smooth jazz recording and it's 11 o'clock at night and we've both had crazy days and we can't get our heads on board and it's just a mess.
Yeah, we're trying to meet
Or
a
we would be,
deadline.
yeah, or we would be like sitting for 2 hours, 3 hours on a call, and things just get out of hand. And we don't get the opportunity to do that very much anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but when we do, those episodes are always the most fun. The smooth jazz, late night, deep voice recordings
Yeah.
where we
Welcome
all
to
pretend we're Delilah.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Fireside Late Night. I think the blooper you're referring to is actually named 3 minutes of chaos.
Yes,
Um,
that's it.
and
Yes.
maybe we'll put it up on the Patreon as a bonus incentive. I don't know. Maybe we'll make it public. So if you go check out our
Yeah,
Patreon, you can do it. You can see it.
that would be super
Who
fun.
knows? I'm gonna have to
That
listen to
one,
it again to remember what we were actually talking about.
it's a mess. It is just completely a mess. Um,
There's
but then the other one, the ones about Tucker Carlson are also
oh
my favorite.
yeah. So sometimes, a lot like Michael Scott, we will start a sentence and we don't know where it's going to end. And
Uh-huh,
part
uh-huh.
of that is the part of that is the ADHD in us, and part of that is under pressure. Sometimes we're trying to do a fill or a transition, and we have information. We know where we want the information to take us, and the transition just doesn't like it does not make a good sentence. It makes a highly questionable sentence or something that's going to sound really bad if it actually makes it out into the real world.
Yes.
A lot of those get incinerated. They don't even get saved in the blooper folder. But there's been a number of times where we've, kind of said something and I've gone, wait a minute, I
Mm,
can't, I can't say that. So that was
yes.
also in the pre-YouTube days. So now
Yeah.
that's the other thing. The other sort of thing is that we have like Big Brother is watching all of our recordings now.
Yeah.
Like all of the raw footage is up on YouTube. Stuff that doesn't make the podcast, stuff that doesn't make the blooper folder, stuff that doesn't make anywhere, it lives for eternity on YouTube now.
On the YouTube.
On the YouTube. So you get the truly, I mean, it's harder to listen to because of that.
Yeah.
But you get the truly chaotic window into our souls
Yeah.
on YouTube. On YouTube. Plus, you get to see that sometimes we're not dressed like the professional talk show hosts that we try to sound like, and we're hanging out in bleach-stained, Nightwing T-shirts recording this.
Yeah.
Or post-workout, post-strongman like halters and spaghetti straps.
Sometimes you just gotta record.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite blooper? Do you have a favorite blooper?
There's a lot. I'm trying to remember. There's some Savannah moments that are always enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
Melatoninally gifted was a good moment.
Yes.
Where we were talking about people who have more melatonin or melanin, I think is actually what we were trying to say.
That is the actual word.
But I said melatonin, and I'll have to re-listen to it. But yeah, that was always fun. There's so many. A lot of them just make me look so dumb.
Oh yeah, same.
How old is John when we learned that I'm the baby? That was
that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
So, although speaking of Savannah, this is a good place I need to put it in there due to ongoing life events and chaos. She has had to completely drop out of the pod indefinitely. So we are grateful and absolutely thrilled to have had her as part of the team, and very much look forward to her continued success. And we will definitely be reading her book, and I think we'll probably talk about it on the show at some point, because
we should do a Fireside Reads.
Because I like it's a fun book to read. It's not a fun book to read, excuse me. It's a good book to read for your knowledge. I think what might be fun in a macabre sort of way is Robin's reactions to it, because Savannah has had a very rough go of it in a lot of ways, and she does not shy away from it in this book. So it's again, Corporal Cannon. Please check it out if you're interested in that at all. I think you can pre-order it. By the time this episode comes out, it might be printing, it might be shipping already. It does happen at the end of September. So it depends on, because there's no solid date, so it depends on when that's actually going to happen. But yes, for now we will bid her adieu, and I guess that technically means that we do have a production assistant slot open. If anybody wants to do a couple hours of work a month for free for us, that would be super cool.
We will shower you with praise.
So much praise. And if you write a book, we'll pump it on our podcast all the time.
Speaking of books. Okay, so here's a question I did want to ask you. If you were going to take all the work that we've done in the last 100 episodes and turn it into a book, what would it be about?
Oh. So I think the underlying theme, I think, of our show and this, it would be a coffee table book. First of all, of course, it'd be huge with like picture references to stuff, because that's what I dream about when I think about making a book based on our research, because yes, I do in fact think about that and dream about it. So it'll probably happen at some point. I think the through line would have to be how bias integrates itself into our thinking so easily. And like I was reading a study last week about how even people who are trained and spend their careers, performing logic as like literal philosophers who are known and who are aware of fallacies and biases and how they affect your thinking and arguments, even people like that are prone to applying bias in their thinking and falling for the same traps that the rest of us are, and at the same rate as the rest of us are, including me, including Robin. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we know that the bias that we hold is in every single one of our episodes, in every single one of our shows. So I think the book would definitely have to, like, the through line would be discussions about how bias impacts these topics. And I think we could tie together a several section long, 3 or 4 section long, um, ex exploratory, I feel like that's the wrong word for it, of, given topics of, like extremism or racial justice or,
Mm-hmm.
climate, or, any number of things that we talk about on the show. Native American history alone,
Yeah.
which is one of our perennial favorite topics, because we learn so much every time we do an episode involving, the indigenous population in the Americas, and their history, and the struggles that they've had to, overcome to be where they are. Um, I think we could have a very compelling, like, highlight of where bias, or of how bias is forming our country right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what about you?
So I think if I was going to write a book, it would be something along the lines of why we can't talk to each other and how to fix it. A lot of that does come down to bias, but so much of what we've discovered in doing this research is that bias and cognitive dissonance and self protection, all of these things factor in so heavily to our ability to talk about these issues. And we've had to face them ourselves as we're writing. We've done entire episodes on it. And I at least have not encountered or read a book that talks about why it's so difficult for us to have these conversations and why we can't get to a place of common ground, because we've learned so far that it's not because one side is completely right or completely wrong. And often it's not because people are intentionally trying to be unkind or to harm other people. It's a lot of just self-preservation and in the way that human brains work, the way human feelings work. And part of me hopes that if we can explain to people why it's so hard to have these conversations and give them some pointers on how to avoid those things, or how to recognize, more than anything, I think it's about recognizing those things in ourselves so that when we approach a conversation, we're able to do it in a way that's not combative.
Yeah.
This has changed the way that I've talked to people, that I do talk to people about these things, because I lead with the bias, I lead with the cognitive dissonance, I lead with what is making you afraid right now. What are you afraid of? What is the worst thing that can happen? And I think if we were more willing to have conversations in that way, then we would be able to solve some of these issues.
Yeah. What's the bad outcome that you are trying to prevent?
Yeah.
And once you know that, then you can start addressing the actual problem, because so much of what, uh, drives the conversation in our politics, in our social arena, is not, this group should get special treatment, or that group needs this, or whatever. It's, I'm afraid of, I'm afraid of being erased. I'm afraid of losing myself. I'm afraid of not being able to have the dream that I always
Mm-hmm.
wanted. And that is a totally different conversation,
Yeah.
because from those fears, or from those concerns, flow forth the, the argument about defund the police, the argument about systemic racism, the argument about the Second Amendment. All of these
Yeah.
things are about, really at their core, like, for most people, what do I need to live the life I dreamed about as a
Yeah.
kid, to live the life that I dream about now as an adult. And there's a lot of fear out there that if we make a change, especially a major change, that those dreams are going to disappear. I'd say it's probably the number one thing behind resistance to adopting electric vehicles. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
cares about whether or not electric vehicles are better for the environment. Anybody who's telling you that they're against electric vehicles because lithium's worse for the environment or whatever like that, they don't care. They don't.
Mm-mm.
What they care about is whether or not they're going to be able to have that cross country road trip with their, family without making it a bigger headache. What they care about
Yeah.
is, are they going to be able to use their work truck to get their work done so they can pay their bills so that they can, live without completely altering how they live their life. Those are the things that cause people to dig in their heels. A lot of people won't acknowledge it. I've found
Right.
like it's never, or it's rarely has somebody connected their conscious arguments with that subconscious fear. And that's why I think you're leading off with, what are you actually worried about? Talking point is so effective.
Yeah. That's been a game changer question for me in having conversations like this with people. Help me understand what you're afraid of.
Yeah. Although that's a loaded question in and of itself, because a lot of people are like, I'm not afraid of anything. So
Right.
that's
Right.
not what I'm saying. But,
See episode on toxic masculinity.
oh man.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, that's our time for the day.
It is.
Yeah, we actually need to wrap this up because we're running long. Um, I'm not going to do an awkward segue. I'm just going to say now's our time for our awkward segue. We're talking about firesidebreakdowns.com now. If you like what we do, if you want to see more of us, if you want to read what we have written and see the sources for it, that's the place to do it. Firesidebreakdowns.com. You can find the podcast. You can find the show notes / script. You can find links to all of our social media. So you can, hopefully see the stuff that the algorithm buries. And you can find a link to our Patreon as well if you would like to support us. We are forever grateful, of course, to our patrons. And you do get some bonus content, extra anywhere from just a snippet to 15 extra minutes, usually of research per episode. Early access to next week's episode. We try to get it out a week in advance. Sometimes it's only a day or two in advance, but that's life. We squeeze this podcast in between our actual day jobs. So, but yeah, and coming soon to a screen near you, maybe we've got to have a Fireside Breakdowns happy hour, and that should be coming up, I think, in October at some point. So, got to look at the old schedule.
The schedule.
Do we have good news this week? Or did we go launch into this blind as we have done lately?
Not gonna lie, it's been a shit kicker of a week. Yep. But
feel you there.
Let's see. Let's see if we can. Good news is first day of regular season football.
Oh, that's right. The Chiefs play today.
Yes. I'm fingers crossed they're playing at home and it's in market. I really want to watch it. Let's see. Okay, this one's gonna be pretty personal to me, because I love country music and I hate Tucker Carlson.
Oh please, no! Listen. Anything that slaps that smug little man, I am for putting in the good news section. I don't care what side of the aisle you are on. We should all agree that Tucker Carlson is a blight on the academic mentality of our country.
Yes.
And should not be allowed to be a thought leader for anybody. Okay.
Exactly. Okay, so country singer Maren Morris, love her to pieces. She responded publicly to some comments that another country singer's wife made that were pretty transphobic. And Tucker Carlson called her out on his show and called her a lunatic country music person. And because she is young and sassy and quite delightful, she had some t-shirts made that say Maren Morris, lunatic country music person.
Ah,
And she sold those. And it has a phone number for the what hotline? The trans lifeline on the front
that's
of the
awesome.
shirt. And she has raised at this point over $100,000 that will be going directly to LGBTQ and trans supportive organizations. So thanks Tucker Carlson for helping raise
Raise
money
money. Ah,
for transgender awareness and support. And thanks to Maren Morris for literally just being so sassy and using that for good.
you'd think that the people who got so wrapped around the axle for being called degenerates would have, and then rallied around it, uh, would know better than to name call uh, other people.
Right. And I mean, if you're going to name call, can we please come up with something better than lunatic country music person? Like, what?
Well, we could.
What?
We could. Tucker Carlson is not capable.
He's not.
That
He's
was
not.
that was the extent of his abilities before we get canceled for canceling Tucker Carlson. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. So, um, I just want to thank everybody. Truly, if you're listening to this from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We do put a lot of effort into this to help make your life a little more informed, we hope, and give you a little better footing for making the decisions um, uh, that you will have to make if you're at all engaged with this world. Um, we do appreciate your listenership, even if you don't leave us any reviews, you jerks. So, no, truly, your listening to the podcast is all that we ever really need. So, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
With that, have a great week. We'll see you 1 week from today, and take care of each other.